What is a data center? A data center houses rows of computers and equipment for storing, processing, and transmitting data. They typically have few windows and extra security, including cameras and sometimes biometric screening. The computers need a lot of electricity to operate and to keep the equipment from overheating. That also requires more electricity and huge amounts of water for elaborate air conditioning. The International Energy Agency says one large data center uses the same amount of electricity as it takes to power 400,000 electric cars. Tech companies are increasingly using their data centers to train and operate artificial intelligence systems. Training an AI model to learn from huge amounts of data requires additional computing power. Conventional data center services run on processors known as CPUs. AI relies on graphics processing units, or GPUs. The IEA estimates that asking OpenAI's ChatGPT to compose an answer requires nearly 10 times as much electricity as a traditional Google search. Amazon, Microsoft, and Google have all announced plans to tap into nuclear energy to help power their US data centers. They've also helped finance new wind and solar farms and other alternative energy sources. In the near term, however, most data centers are still heavily reliant on the surrounding electricity grid, which is largely powered by burning fossil fuels, the primary cause of global warming. This is making it harder for some countries and tech companies to keep their promises to address climate change.
The U.S. is home to the majority of the world's data centers. There are over 2,800 in the United States, and the next closest is the United Kingdom with less than 400. Now, data centers are becoming a real estate play for investors.
Simple economics. The demand exploded in the last couple of years.
Data centers are the physical backbone of digital infrastructure, housing servers and the equipment to run everything from AI and basic internet functions. But not everyone wants to live near these hubs of electricity.
75 people signed on to speak, and most do not want data centers built near homes or schools. A campus of more than a dozen buildings would be built near neighborhoods and 3 elementary schools.
The need for land to build the data centers on has become a sore spot in states where hundreds of data centers already exist, like Virginia.
There has been a backlash against data centers, and that's why I'm sitting in the seat that I am. People were frustrated. Residents felt like their voices were not being heard. They felt like some of the more contentious data center projects should have never been approved, and they want someone to listen to them.
How data centers became billion-dollar real estate investments. The world's top tech companies are pouring billions into building new data centers in the US. Amazon Web Services is investing an additional $35 billion to establish multiple data center campuses in new locations across Virginia by 2040. And top AI competitor Microsoft is reportedly planning to build a $100 billion data center facility.
What's driving that is AI. The big technology companies are telling us that they're going to spend $1 trillion on their digital infrastructure over the next 5 years. A lot of that's going to go into data centers.
Vacancies decreased in the first quarter of 2024 compared to a year prior. Some experts say new infrastructure is still not enough to keep up with the exponential demand for computing power.
I can safely say that in the next 3 to 4 years, we're not going to solve this demand problem. I think the demand for land is directly tied to the demand for power, and the value of the land goes up significantly if it's in close proximity to utility power that has immediately available capacity.
For example, CyrusOne Data Centers bought land in Virginia for more than $89 million, with plans to build. The seller had acquired the land for nearly $9 million a couple years before. The data center's proximity to a power center and power grid is more important than where the data center is built in the country.
So when you think about markets like Columbus, Ohio, Reno, Nevada, those are examples of markets that have emerged over the last couple of years as an alternative to places like Northern Virginia or Silicon Valley.
It's interesting, when we look at our global business today, not just within real estate, but across the entire firm, we see data centers as the most exciting asset class.
You know, when you think about the end users of the data center space, the biggest users, you know, it's a Fortune 20 list, Fortune 50 at best, all of them with a very strong balance sheet, all of them with a significant demand for incremental data center space globally. So my view is that we absolutely need more capital to grow this industry and to keep up with the demand that we're seeing.
That capital is coming through private equity partnerships with data center providers.
I am Jordan Sadler, the Senior Vice President of Public and Private Investor Relations at Digital Realty. Our customers came to us and they said, you know, how much capacity do you have available in this market or that market or all markets, depending on the customer? And this was an unusual request, and we had multiple requests of this sort. In order to execute on all of that demand, essentially to build all that capacity, we said, hey, let's tap some additional capital.
The total value of commercial real estate property for data centers rose more than 60% last year in places like Loudoun County, Virginia, the data center capital of the world. Local landowners are seeing the value of their property soar.
We do see that land gets more value when it is on the appropriate power line for a data center's need. My experience in working with data centers is they do value that, and they do, come to the table aggressively in order to obtain that land.
That means county tax revenues are considerably higher. Both the taxes for the property and the equipment within the data centers. In some ways, local landowners benefit.
Had that revenue not come in from a data center or any company or any industry in general, they would have had to probably raise taxes if they wanted to improve their water system, or if they had roads they wanted to improve. They might have to put that on the residents to pay the taxes for it. But when you have a large user that has a significant taxable valuation or tax assessment, and that money does go back to the community, and there is a levy for the schools too. So it's kind of like giving the community a raise.
But utility rates can come in and impact them in other negative ways. Dominion Energy has proposed rate hikes in several different states in 2024. They've dealt with unprecedented demand as of late thanks to data center business. Residents have growing concerns about the outward appearance of data centers.
There are varying degrees of pushback, and being an American, you can relate to certain states where they push back quite a bit around all development, and certain locations where there might be more pushback around all development, and then there are places that are generally more pro-development.
As one of my concerns is, where are we putting them? Are we putting them in areas that are residential areas? Are we putting them in land that's industrial? Another consideration is, How high can they go? There are some hyperscale data centers. We're looking at 110 feet.
Residents of Virginia's Prince William County have made their concerns known.
There's kind of a spectrum, and there's a benefit to operating in the places where it's tougher to build, because that typically means there's less competition or less supply.
One planned data center in Virginia's Devlin Park garnered enough pushback that a Twitter account and a GoFundMe account were created to raise awareness about a potential project residents didn't want built.
We have a lot of people on the board who are inclined to really limit where we put data centers. We cannot put them any and everywhere. And we also have a very strong, a very vocal group of data center opponents. Don't want us to build any other data centers in the county because they feel like we have more than our fair share.
Prince William County supervisors say they consider each data center application that comes.
We cannot ban one industry from the county. We have to work with every applicant and look at every application that we receive. I do have a great deal of concerns about where they're sited. I have concerns about energy, and I have concerns about environment. And again, I am very concerned about diversifying our commercial tax base within the county.
Some experts have also expressed concerns around the obsolescence of these data centers not long after they're built.
If someone came in and said, I'm going to build a data center and I'm just going to lease it to whoever needs a data center, that kind of raises a red flag to me about sustainability.
But Sadler feels like these buildings are not on a quick path to become obsolete, thanks to the digital transformations happening across industries.
While you do see the leading edge customers, the largest technology companies in the world, pushing the envelope on the infrastructure they need to support the latest and greatest NVIDIA GPUs, most customers by number are not the same as those customers. They're not evolving their technology needs quite as quickly.
This massive strain on localities' power systems is causing one company to consider renewable energy capabilities to meet this demand.
Over time, as we catch up with supply and demand, I think you will see some of that older space get refurbished, repurposed, find alternative uses, maybe EV charging facilities, fleet charging. We've done a couple of conversions in the Northeast of older telecom data centers into vertical farming. So some really fascinating alternative uses.
As for longevity of these buildings, experts paint a mixed picture.
Don't envy the utility companies right now. They've got demand that's, in some cases, 5x what they've seen over the last 30 years. And they're seeing that over the next 5. Massive amounts of demand, regulated in most cases. And so I do believe that all adds up to some off-grid solutions that may combine the utility source with the data center source in a single structured environment. And it won't be just in the US. I think you'll see that globally.
What is this industry going to become in 20, 30 years? Is this something that is still going to remain in the county? Are we going to have the same demand? I get nervous about the potential of empty big box buildings. And people are assuring me that, that's not going to happen. This is different. But that is still a concern.
They're not GPUs, or it's not a laptop or an iPhone, where there's a next generation of this technology that changes every year or every 2 years. The general technology that supports the delivery of power to these servers is generally very similar.
But one thing seems to be all but certain. Near-term demand will be steady.
Technology is not going to go away. You look at, your NVIDIA, Intel, all of the different conversations around chips and what's going to happen with training-based AI versus inference-based AI. All of that's going to create more demand.
Data centers store computer systems and house critical applications and data for a variety of organizations. The industry has recently set its sights on North Dakota as a place to set up even more data center buildings. Ariana Gonzalez spoke with the CEO of Dakota Carrier Network about the benefits North Dakota can bring to these companies.
While many of us dread the cold, the harsh and temperamental North Dakota winters have become an attractive asset for data centers. The computers and wiring they use produce a lot of heat. Without appropriate cooling, this heat can be severely damaging to the inner workings of these computers, putting data at risk.
We have a climate that's really optimal for heat dissipation when it's 40 below. The days of the year that we can take advantage of free cooling is a lot higher than anywhere else in the country.
In addition to cooling, data centers use a lot of power, whether it's coal or gas. North Dakota's many forms of energy production are another driving factor in more data centers setting up in the state.
The excess generation capabilities that North Dakota has is really positioning us to be a leader in the data center market.
Another benefit of opening data centers in North Dakota is its network connectivity. DCN and its 13 owner companies have over 70,000 miles of fiber optic infrastructure in the ground. So if a data center wants to locate in a very rural area next to a generation plant, there is likely fiber connectivity close to that generation facility.
North Dakota actually leads the nation in the amount of fiber that we have invested into even the most rural areas in the state.
These factors come together to make North Dakota an ideal place for more members of this industry. In Bismarck, I'm Ariana Gonzalez, reporting for your news leader.
In late March, Western Hospitality Partners announced this $6 billion data center planned for rural Oldham County. It's called Project Lincoln OC Data Center. A press release says it's a $6 billion investment that'll be one of the largest private investments in Kentucky's history.
Ultimately, I'm not against data centers. I'm not against hyperscale data centers. What we want, though, is to have the appropriate amount of time to find the appropriate locations in the county. Putting it in agriculture and residential community that affects an elementary school, the fiscal court, this beautiful downtown, it's just not appropriate.
Tim Tipton, who lives in Oldham County, is part of a grassroots effort opposed to the planned data center at its proposed location.
First and foremost, we need to slow the process down. We need to have at least a 90-day moratorium so we can actually collect the facts and we can fundamentally understand what it's going to do. We can have the developer can have community meetings, and then we can ask them direct questions. Right now, the developers have not reached out to any of us.
And I think the biggest point of our, grassroots opposition to this is that not only does this bring this to our backyard, this sets the precedence that everybody in the county could have one in their backyard too, because they will not need to go through a zoning change.
Plans call for that data center to be built right here. This is a 267-acre site. It is right off North Highway 53. A one sheet on the project provided to me by RunSwitch PR says Project Lincoln OC Data Center will, once fully operational, create 150 plus jobs with an average salary over $80,000, generate tens of millions in annual Oldham County taxes, and benefit services like Oldham County schools and public libraries. The proposed data center is in State Senator Lindsay Tishner's district.
So more than anything, the opposition to this we're seeing is the location of the project and the process that we're watching unfold on the local level and also at the state level. Location, number one, is the biggest issue. Process is the next biggest issue. Transparency is so valuable for a community to have buy-in, and we're really not seeing that.
Oldham County Judge Executive David Vogel says the county didn't recruit this. The company came to them, and they are very well aware of opposition that's come up.
I'm not saying that I'm in favor of or opposed to a data center in Oldham County. This particular location has run into quite a bit of opposition, and we're hearing it. We're not here to push something on people they don't want, and we're actually trying to work with the company to encourage them to consider other locations in Oldham County.
Judge Executive Vogel says they respect everyone in the county that has an opinion. He has also heard from people who think it's a great idea and they'd like to see it. Vogel says he's trying to slow the train down, and there are other locations they believe could fit.
We've actually asked the company, Western Hospitality Partners, to withdraw their application from the next Technical Review Committee meeting and push that forward, and we'll continue to discuss this, and they can bring it forward at a future TRC meeting if they choose to do so, or they may listen to what we've encouraged them to consider other locations in the county. We have a couple of places where I think it could fit.
In a Facebook post, the judge said Western Hospitality Partners has accepted a request to postpone a presentation before the Oldham County Technical Review Committee until May or later. I'm David Williams, Spectrum News.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. For more stories in your community, click the subscribe button here. You can
This is our cold water pressure in the kitchen. This is where I fill up water for storage. Those are the things we have to fill up to flush the toilets.
So you can see the sediment from the data center. Wow, and that's just from the water coming out of your faucet?
Yeah, and this is what's in all the pipes.
Just the well itself is probably $20,000, and that's not counting any of the
all
Faucets,
the replacement
yeah.
of the fixtures and
That's
faucets
just
and
the way.
toilets and the lines that come underneath the house. It's overwhelming because you really feel like you are up against this huge wall that you can't penetrate. There's nothing that you can do, and they don't care.
I'm here in Mansfield, Georgia, driving by Meta's new 2 million square foot data center facility. Facilities like this are being used to power things like ChatGPT and other AI tools that are becoming integrated into our daily life.
Data centers, it's going to be a very hot item.
This entire supercomputer is built to power Grok.
We see data centers as the most exciting asset class.
Meta is building a 2 gigawatt plus data center that is so large it would cover a significant part of Manhattan.
But data centers come with big costs. From light and noise pollution to the environmental impacts, to the potential rising costs of energy bills. These facilities put extraordinary demand on the power grid and require entirely new infrastructure.
They should be responsible for that, not us.
Search the internet for profits that Meta has made, Amazon, Microsoft. They can afford to pay for their own generation.
We came to Georgia to ask 2 questions. What's the true cost of the AI revolution, and who should be paying for it?
Your house is here, and the data center is right there.
It's less than 400 yards.
Beverly and Jeff Morris bought their home an hour's drive from downtown Atlanta in 2016, but their roots in the community run much deeper.
Being in the country has always just been my peace and my therapy. When we found this place, we decided that this was it. It was perfect.
I was actually raised probably 5 miles from here. Felt like coming home.
The data center that's now the Morris' next door neighbor happens to be owned by Meta, the company you know for Facebook and Instagram, but has also been breaking into artificial intelligence. They started construction on this data center campus in 2018.
Definitely changed everything. They destroyed the environment, taking down all the trees across the road.
Beautiful pines, beautiful forest.
The light pollution is...
We don't have to have a night light in the house. You can walk around the house at night and see everything. It's that bright.
This is a video of the dust from Facebook where the construction was.
What it looks like right now out my front door. The wind blowing in all of this stuff from across the construction, across the road.
This is all from Meta.
Yeah, I was standing on my front porch. I think eventually that affected our well water. We're on a well here, and we started having issues with our well in 2018. I have to replace the hot water heater. I've replaced 2 washing machines and a dishwasher because of the sediment that's coming in.
A lot of what the Morrises are facing is from the polluting effects of this massive construction, but that's only one part of the story. There are serious costs to communities once data centers are operational too. To explain that, we have to back up for a second. I wouldn't blame you if you were asking yourself, what the heck is a data center anyway? Their origins date back to early, clunky supercomputers or mainframes in the 1950s and 60s. And then in the 90s, with the birth of the internet, the modern data center was born as a way for internet providers to connect businesses and the world to the web. In the 2010s, data centers became larger as they became critical to new cloud storage.
To the cloud. With the cloud, we share a sync folder that allows us to all work on the same documents.
Everything from your pet photos to entire workplaces to files for video streaming, like this video you're watching right now. We're in the cloud. Today, we are in the midst of a tectonic shift in processing needs, as large as the birth of the internet. Artificial intelligence.
A transformational moment for data center demand.
But the thing is, AI processing demands are much larger. One report showed that a Google search using a ChatGPT-like AI feature used 30 times as much power as a normal Google search. In the next 3 years, data center use of electricity is expected to double or even triple. And the state of Georgia has the fastest data center growth in the entire country.
The 2 biggest reasons data centers come to Georgia are that electricity rates for industrials, which is the class that they're in, are 42% below the national average. And the second biggest one are data center tax breaks. They received over $180 million in tax breaks last year.
The week we were in Georgia, a showdown was happening at the state capitol over two bills tied to data centers.
Senator Hofstadter had proposed two different bills, and one of them was SB 34, which was the data centers bill, to move the burden of the operational costs of data centers from ratepayers to the data centers themselves.
And what is SB 94?
That is the Consumer Utility Council, a legal advocate for ratepayers and small businesses.
Bills like these are the result of mounting residential anger and the work of dedicated advocates across the state, like Diana Dietz, who lives 50 miles away from the Capitol in Fayette County.
This is a huge industrial project plopped in a residential area. This was the original plan, 122 acres. And then the Development Authority got involved.
In 2022, officials in Fayette County voted to annex and rezone an additional 412 acres for a data center campus. Fayetteville's City Council voted 5-0 in favor of the development, despite passionate opposition from some local residents. The site was then purchased by QTS, which is owned by Blackstone, for $153.8 million.
These speculators, investors, are secretly buying up land right next to homeowners. And it was all done so that when we all went to the 4 public hearings between the county and the city, it was a done deal. This is the one that's currently under construction, and this is where Gene and Joe are.
Gene and Joe Marshall live on the edge of Fayetteville in Fayette County on an 8-acre property.
This driveway is almost the line for Fayette County versus Fayetteville, where QTS's property is located. We have absolutely no say in anything that happens over here.
Despite their vocal opposition to the project, living next to construction on all sides of their home has become their daily reality for the last 2 years.
They do nightly pours over here, and in the back part at the other building, the lights are shining and there is noise. 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. So they don't stop. Oh yeah, sure.
We went to visit Nikki Vanderslice, who heads up the Fayette County Economic Development Authority, a non-governmental agency that played a central role in the marketing of the land for data center development.
For residents who live alongside these data centers, life has become very difficult. What do you say to them?
Well, I say to them that there's a couple of things. One, we were very transparent. The Development Authority was very open about attracting a data center, and there wasn't any resistance until it came to their property specifically.
Vanderslice says data centers are good for the community, even if some don't see the benefits yet.
In 2021, that property paid $36,000 in property taxes total. In 2024, on raw land, it paid $1.13 million in property taxes. That contributed $760,000 to our local Board of Education. I'm apologetic that they're being impacted, but I also see the benefits of what the companies are doing and how they're improving our economy. And so there's the balance that when you have 200 out of 120,000 people, that you have to balance what's the highest and best use for the whole of the community.
It's just the height of selfishness to imagine that one county's benefit to the huge detriment of 158 other counties in Georgia that now have to pay higher electric bills is okay. It's not okay. It drives inequity. It's very immoral too.
That's Patty Durand, and as you can tell, she does not agree with Nikki Vanderslice. Patty is a longtime consumer advocate and expert on energy policy who's been raising the alarm about rising costs of electricity related to data centers.
Are data centers going to drive up energy costs for residents across the state?
On May 1st, Georgia Power residential ratepayers experienced a 24% rate increase. Just since 2023, Georgia Power has raised rates 6 times.
And related to those rate hikes, remember those 2 bills we mentioned earlier? We were with Patty as she was watching a live feed of the Senate floor.
Today is crossover day, which means any bill that does not get through one side of the House or the Senate to the other side is dead for the year. And right now, Senate Bill 34 is not on that list.
By later that evening, both bills had failed to get a vote. As disappointed and angry as Patty was, she wasn't too surprised.
Georgia legislators are getting soaked with money from Georgia Power.
Is that a conflict of interest?
Absolutely. It is clearly corrupting. This is the highest paid utility CEOs in the country. Why is the poorest region in the country paying the most to our CEOs?
$23 million, $33 million.
It's ridiculous how much money they make.
Our time in Georgia is crucial to understanding what's happening all across the country because the growth of data centers is not slowing down anytime soon. And tech billionaires have already been complaining about the amount of red tape involved in powering this growth.
Getting energy permitted is like a very heavily regulated government function. And if you're talking about building large new power plants or large build outs, that is just a heavily regulated thing.
The regulatory body in question is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, also known as FERC, an independent and historically nonpartisan agency that regulates interstate transmission of electricity, natural gas, and oil. But just last month, President Trump signed an executive order placing FERC under White House control. And he's been boasting about his ability to fast-track new projects.
We're going to get very rapid approvals in the United States. Like with the AI plans, under emergency declaration, I can get the approvals done myself without having to go through years of waiting.
With this alliance between the federal government, Silicon Valley, and utility monopolies, who's looking out for regular Americans like the Morrises?
During the peak season, our electric bill was maybe $250. Yeah. And now it's probably $400.
Your electricity bill has doubled. Wow.
It's been a struggle.
Every month it's a struggle. Jeff would like to retire, but he keeps working because we have to pay our bills.
Do you think that people should have to pay more because of data centers?
No, absolutely not. They should pay for that difference. It's hard enough for a regular person to pay their electric bill as it is. I don't think that's right at all.
We reached out to the big tech companies, including Meta and QTS, asking for an interview and a tour of their facilities, but both declined to participate in the story.
Duran says despite the bill's failure, the fight will go on. A number of other states have similar bills up for debate right now.
The reason I think other states should pass it, whether we do or not, is that data centers could possibly come to their state next. There needs to be legislation to protect them because by all accounts, data center growth is going to be very fast.
Before you go, please support our work by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. We're always looking to tell more stories like this one, unpacking economic systems that impact all of our daily lives. What other issues do you want to see us cover? Sound off in the comments, and again, don't forget to like and subscribe.
A ChatGPT query uses about 10 times as much electricity as a Google search. That difference is the catalyst for a new era of energy consumption, one where our evolving technology demands are now reshaping how the US and the world power our future.
Nuclear energy at a turning point, seeing momentum as power demand jumps from electrification and data centers.
Nuclear power and technology, or big tech getting involved in it. Nuclear power has sort of gotten back into the conversation.
We're going to be way ahead of AI, and we've got to produce tremendous amounts of electricity.
We're in the midst of a nuclear renaissance right now, and that's because power demand is meaningfully rising for the first time in a few decades. And at the moment, we just don't have enough clean energy options to meet that power demand from things like reshoring, electrification, as well as data centers.
This is why big tech is betting on nuclear power. Data centers around the world, built by tech giants like Amazon, Microsoft, Meta, and Google, are hungry, not just for AI training sets, but for energy. Artificial intelligence, driven by massive computing power, is reshaping not only how we work, but also how we think about energy consumption.
What AI did is it escalated the power demand at individual data centers by a factor of 10, or even 100 if we're looking forward into the future. That means those are data centers that are needing power along the same scale as entire cities.
The Department of Energy estimates global electricity demand could rise from 1/3 to 3/4 by 2050, with the U.S. energy grid seeing an unprecedented strain. Data centers powering artificial intelligence and cloud computing will be among the biggest contributors to this growing demand. Energy use was already slowly ticking up, but oil and gas prices skyrocketed as energy powerhouse Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, and geopolitical volatility was on the rise.
That's really when these dialogues started to happen again in earnest, the idea of what does energy security, what does energy independence mean, and that's when we saw countries start to look at nuclear once again.
As OpenAI introduced ChatGPT to the masses in November 2022, the buzz and investment around large language models put the US on a path to an AI future and the energy demands that come with it.
It wasn't the tech companies' problem to understand how electricity worked. They knew that they could build a data center, plug into the grid, and there was enough power. And then their marketing people made sure that they had enough renewable energy credits to claim that they're actually using renewables to power their data center.
And so really right now, everyone is trying to play catch up of how are we going to meet all of these power demand goals as well as reduce our emissions. And so that's where nuclear comes into the picture. Solar and wind are great, but they're intermittent resources. That means that it's not always sunny, it's not always windy, so they aren't 24/7. And what nuclear is it's 24/7 baseload emissions-free energy.
Major tech companies are leading the charge. Just last spring, Amazon agreed to a nuclear power purchase agreement with Talen Energy in Pennsylvania and bought the adjacent data center from Talen for $650 million. Now, Amazon is investing over $500 million into a number of nuclear power projects ranging from Virginia to Washington State. Microsoft is working with Constellation Energy to reopen the 3 Mile Island nuclear facility with plans for $1.5 billion in upgrades there. Meanwhile, Bill Gates founded TerraPower is also working on a plant in Wyoming. Then there's Google, who's working with startup Kairos Power to bring advanced reactors online in the next decade, though no dollar amounts have been announced for those investments yet. Meta also says it's looking into nuclear power, targeting 1 to 4 gigawatts in new energy capacity. But these investments and partnerships are becoming an industry-wide trend, all driven by a shared belief. Nuclear is the only solution.
The tech companies have a vision of the world based on AI. That world is only possible if they produce a large amount of clean, steady power. That's why their work into nuclear now is fundamental to whether their entire world vision can come true.
These are existing and retired nuclear sites in the US with space for new reactors. The next step in the sustainable transition is to design, build, and bring those new reactors online alongside the existing ones. Enter SMRs, or small modular reactors. Unlike traditional reactors, SMRs are smaller, faster to build, and more cost-effective. They produce around 300 megawatts of energy compared to the typical 1 gigawatt output of traditional plants, and their modular designs allow for off-site assembly, reducing construction costs and build timelines. Tech and energy companies are working to bring several of these reactors online over the next decade as incremental steps toward a broader energy transformation.
You can assemble them at a factory and then bring them to the site for the final assembly versus having to build it from scratch on the location. And so that's what's traditionally been done with commercial reactors, and that's why they've often been very expensive. And so there's a lot of hope that with these smaller modular reactors that are about 300 megawatts or even micro reactors, which can be tens of megawatts, that could kind of address some of the issues of these cost overruns.
SMRs don't operate much differently than traditional reactors, but the efficiency gains they do offer will be important for intermittently scaling our energy future.
Obviously, there's a role to build still some of these plants, but small kind of scales more naturally with how demand growth goes, especially when you look at the AI side and data center space. A lot of sweet spots are in the couple hundred megawatts in terms of total usage, but those are building up in dozens of megawatt chunks per time, so they themselves are modular. So the smaller plants really can match that growth more organically.
While SMRs hold promise, they're still a few years away. All plans in the US are currently slated to open in 2030 and beyond. Right now, there are no SMRs operational in the US, and regulatory approval will remain a challenge for years to come. There are also experts who say our nuclear solution should be a combination of these new, smaller output designs in addition to building more traditional commercial reactors.
While the SMRs are cheaper up front, they also provide meaningfully less power. And so while there's so much momentum behind SMRs, there are others that say we really need new commercial scale reactors to meet our energy goals and to meet our climate goals. And right now, there are no commercial reactors under construction in the US.
I think that for a country like the United States, the natural process is we need an enormous number of large reactors, like that's how much power we need, is that SMRs will be a way to open up the conversation. SMR gives us a term that sounds like it's new and advanced, so it makes a lot of people a lot more comfortable talking about nuclear.
Nuclear has always been very polarizing from the get-go, and then accidents like Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, and Fukushima really kind of influenced the public discourse on nuclear and its benefits versus its drawbacks.
The 3 Mile Island power plant, the plant's reactor cooling system malfunctioned yesterday. It exposed about 8 workers to some degree of nuclear contamination.
Experts argue much of the opposition is based on misinformation.
Cars were being checked with Geiger counters.
You're not finding anything, are you, Brian? Not a damn thing.
In today's information age, more people have access to data that highlights nuclear safety and effectiveness.
Many people think that meltdowns created the anti-nuclear movement. That's not the case. Meltdowns confirmed to the anti-nuclear movement that they were right and converted a lot of people who were previously pro-nuclear or neutral. Because there was already an anti-nuclear movement based on fear of nuclear weapons and opposition to abundant energy, it was able to reinterpret and add public fear to otherwise essentially benign accidents like 3 Mile Island.
The other main opposition to nuclear has always been around its cost. What's different this time around is tech companies have a lot of money, and they also have a very big vested interest in getting these nuclear power plants off the ground. This is incredibly long term. These reactors can be online for 60 to 80 years, and so in the long term that nets out into a very attractive option.
I think when you look at a lot of use cases around energy growth and scale up just in history, it's often going to be dictated and driven by, where it solves the most pressing issues and the most people who are in the most pain. And I think what we're seeing is there's a crunch on that on the tech side, and that helps because those companies also happen to be some of the biggest companies in the world, which then supports, I think, some more aggressive scale up and scale out.
Depending on how long a nuclear plant's been closed and how much has been already taken apart, the cost to bring back a nuclear reactor can range from maybe $100 million in the case of a recently closed plant with no updates needed, to $1 billion or more if significant rework has to be done and parts need to be bought and installed.
Energy demand in the U.S. is rapidly rising at a rate never seen before, expected to increase as much as 20% over the next decade. Right now, nuclear makes up about 20% of our energy use in the U.S., but that share is only going to increase. While there are other factors in our increased power needs, data centers and AI are the main drivers. Market interest in AI's potential has also gone up, part of the reason for the complete shift in focus toward the technology and now its energy needs.
The problem is the tech companies eventually needed enough power that they exceeded the ability to get it from the grid. And because the grid was not well prepared for big tech, because big tech had been pushing in the opposite direction, the wrong direction for baseload power, they had to realize that they had to make it themselves. So big tech had to build out of the box that they themselves had put themselves into.
It feels like every single day there's a big new study saying, it's going to stress the grid, it's going to cause all of these problems. And so there are many in the industry who say that because it gets smarter with time, it won't require as much energy. And that could certainly end up being the case. But on the other hand, we have power demand growing from other things like reshoring and electrification. And so there is no doubt that power demand is going up.
But the bigger picture here is the growing potential of a nuclear-powered future. By driving innovation and funding critical infrastructure, companies like Google, Amazon, and Microsoft are helping to reshape the energy landscape.
I think maybe the best way to phrase it is to borrow what I've heard Sam say, which is abundant intelligence is largely built on abundant energy. And so I think tech's ability to continue to scale and deliver better things for humanity is going to be underpinned by availability of energy.
The path to a nuclear-powered future is not without challenges, though. Building new plants and reviving old ones is a challenge met with obstacles like regulatory hurdles, supply chain complexities, and long timelines for construction.
For the first time, we're now bringing old reactors back online. Right now, there's not actually a blueprint for how we go about doing this, but I think right now the industry is trying to figure out how do we go about doing this, what are the first steps.
Yet, the momentum is clear. With SMRs set to come online in the 2030s and existing plants being revived for the first time in decades, tech is now leading the way toward a new era of energy and sustainability.
We are finally moving in the right energy direction now that the hungriest energy users in society have found nuclear energy and plan to deploy it. It's not the profitability of their investment in nuclear per se that they're chasing. What they're hoping to do is unlock a future that looks a lot like what techno-optimists dreamed of in the 1960s and 70s, when we thought we would have 1,000 nuclear plants in the US. In a way, tech, through power needs for AI, are unlocking the beautiful future we thought we were headed to before the oil shocks of the 70s.
Noise complaints prompted a company running a data center near Williston to build sound mitigation walls around the site.
But those who live nearby say it's just as noisy as ever. Michael Anthony joins us now from the Atlas Power Data Center for an update. Michael?
Monica and Alan, as you can see, the walls are up here at the Atlas Power Data Center. They line the south and western parts of the site. They do not go through the north and eastern part, so there is a gap not fully enclosed. Now, no matter what kind of mitigation one would use here, it would be impossible to say they would get rid of all the noise coming from this data center. However, the residents we spoke to say these walls are completely ineffective. Now, I came out here last night with a decibel reader and compared it with results on June 21st before the walls went up. Now, we're seeing similar levels ranging from anywhere from 65 to 85 decibels, and now that's comparable to a washing machine according to the CDC. I will say some of the readings yesterday looked higher than on June 21st, but there was a strong gust which may have factored into it, so I won't say whether or not it's louder than it was before. Either way, the levels are still about the same. Now, several residents to the south of the site, including Corey Seidel, say this is very disappointing.
It's still unacceptable noise because it's heavy industrial. Is supposed to keep all their noise and dust and everything inside their perimeter, and it's definitely not that.
We did reach out to Urban Solutions Group, who designed the walls, for comment, and CEO Heidi Gill declined to comment on this matter. Now, phase 2 of the data center was operating under a 60-day certificate of occupancy, which was approved by Williams County Commissioners on June 29th. That means the commissioners will have to discuss this matter before the end of the month to determine whether or not to extend it. In Williams County, I'm Michael Anthony reporting for your news leader.
The growth of technology now is driving change right here in central Indiana, where data centers that sit on acres of land are being built all across the region.
Our Alex Almanza discovered that as these high-tech facilities grow, so do concerns about their impact on local communities.
Whether it's AI or uploading photos to social media, the cloud powers it all. But where is the cloud? It's farmland like this, now prime real estate for data centers. According to datacentermap.com, Indiana's home to 56 data centers, with 23 of them right here in Indianapolis. And while the list continues to grow, it's residents like Andrew Filler who say such a tech boom in Indiana comes at a cost to neighbors.
It's definitely concerning, especially the water usage and power usage.
In Franklin Township, a proposed data center would sit on nearly 500 acres of farmland. During a public hearing Wednesday, it was standing room only as residents weren't so welcome of their new tech neighbor. Local leaders say they want to take a closer look at the financial impact.
One of my big concerns, and a lot of the councilors' concerns, is that we see millions of dollars go downtown all the time. We've just got a $66 million loan pending for a large hotel in the Old City Hall. What are we going to do for these things out here in the townships?
But while projects like this are booming across the country, experts say there's an environmental factor to consider, especially in parts of the U.S. where water needed to cool data centers is already at concerning levels.
So, for example, right now, a lot of data centers, they are actually located in water-stressed region. And at the same time, data center did use a large amount of water, and that's not good for the system, for the society as a whole.
Li-Shen Wang adds that while he understands there's a growing need for AI, there needs to be more careful consideration of how resources are used.
We just need to be mindful about their environmental consequence and try to do that in a best way we can.
Alex Almanza, 13 News.
And the company looking to build the data center in Franklin Township has asked to remain anonymous as they go through the rezoning process. Meanwhile, neighbors will hold additional neighborhood meetings early next month, with zoning meetings to follow at a later date.
And you've probably heard of the old movie Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Well, you might call this the invasion of the data centers. Now, those massive warehouses that are filled with computers that support the AI boom are popping up all across the state, and they need a lot of power.
So here's the headline in all of this. One of the key data points of energy consumption is known as peak demand. It's growing 100 times faster for data centers than for all other electric customers. In other words, data centers create new demands for energy, big demands, and yet it's homeowners who are seeing the highest rate increases in the state. Joe Dana is here to tell us what one state senator wants to do about it. Joe?
In January's APS rate hike approved by the commission, homes, schools, churches, and small businesses saw rate increases averaging more than 8%. Extra large businesses, including those data centers, saw rate hikes averaging just 3.4%. A state senator is joining other experts across the country warning about the need to protect homeowners from the data center boom.
It's been a nuisance for us.
As much as he tries,
with all the noise and clatter.
Ralph Woodsum can't avoid the AI revolution. Not because he uses his computer much. Rather, construction of an expanded APS substation across the street will support a new data center also built nearby. Ralph can see the top of that massive new building in the distance.
You're sort of seeing the AI revolution unfold before your eyes.
Yes, I am. You know, they've picked Arizona, and I can understand the benefits.
But as the construction shows, data centers need a lot of support. This is advertised to use the same amount of power, equivalent to more than 13,000 homes. And it's actually small. One in Buckeye, once fully built over the next decade, will use power equivalent to more than 400,000 homes.
It is mind-boggling.
State Senator Priya Sundaresan is watching closely Arizona's data center boom. Homeowners like Ralph aren't supposed to pay for the growth of data centers, but there are warning signs. The former chair of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission saying just this month, political leaders who wanted economic growth from these data centers are now realizing it can come at a cost of increased customer bills. As an engineer and attorney, Sundaresan says she wants more accountability for how utilities in Arizona do business.
Democratic legislators will continue to be looking at what are those laws that can be changed to further increase customer protection.
For their part, SRP, a nonprofit utility, and APS, a for-profit, say they ensure data center companies pay their own way. APS saying it uses economic feasibility studies to ensure data centers driving the cost increases are paying those costs. This protects residential customers. An APS report shows it's data centers that will account for 94% of projected growth in energy needs by 2025. Homeowners like Ralph will be watching their bills closely to see just how much it goes up.
Arizona residents don't expect to help subsidize a private entity like this.
Republican leadership at the legislature declined to comment on this. Now, this is all moving very fast. For example, just a year ago, APS said they would need about 5,400 megawatts of additional capacity by 2038. During a recent conference call with investors, well, they said that they had secured or were planning for more than 2 times that amount, 14,000 megawatts. You're talking about a massive increase just in the last year of what we're expecting.
Wow. All right, Joe, thanks.